Well, it's good to see all of you this morning. If you're new, my name's Chris. We've never met before. And if you're looking for something fun and free to do with your whole family, Saturday, so like 6 days from now, down at the Cumming City Center, out there on the lawn, is a Christmas tree lighting that we as a church, we're one of the key sponsors of. And so if you're looking for something free, there's food down there, there'll be lighting. The Big Beyond is a band, and they'll do a bunch of Christmas songs down there. I'll be up there on stage for about 5 or 7 minutes, trying to welcome everybody and make people in the Christmas spirit. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time. And so if you're looking for something to do, would love for you to show up out there. No, just me and this dude over here are going to be hanging out. So that's great. The rest of y'all stay home and watch Georgia, Tennessee, whatever you're going to do. So we all know who's going to win. Anyway, yeah, okay. All right, y'all figure that out. All right, and then the other thing I want to let you know about, in all seriousness, I'm a kid that grew up in San Antonio, Texas. I never served in the military, but I had 2 grandfathers and a grandmother that served in the military. I had buddies that have served in the military, and growing up in San Antonio, it's a huge military town. And I just have a ton of personal respect and gratitude for the men and women that either have served or are serving in our armed forces. And I know yesterday was Veterans Day. And so if you're a veteran here in this room or you're watching online, on behalf of myself and our entire church, thank you so much for what you do. It means a lot. Grateful. We are in the middle of a series walking through the book of Psalms. And so today we're going to be in Psalms chapter 142. And if it's your first time to church, you're going, gosh, did I miss a lot? You missed a little bit. So there's 141 chapters. Before that, there's 150 total. We're going to finish it up here in a couple of weeks at the end of the month of November. So today we'll be in Psalms chapter 142. While you're turning there, I need you to know that this is written by King David in a cave. It's a prayer from a cave. Now, one of 2 caves that this probably happened in, either the caves of Adullam or out in the caves in the wilderness of En-Gedi. And so when he was on the run from Saul, but this was a psalm or a prayer that he prayed while he was in the caves on the run from King Saul. And so while you're turning there, I'm going to read the 2 passages where he's at in Adullam and En-Gedi. It'll set up kind of where he's at in his mindset. Then I'll pray for us, and we'll dive into the message. Go ahead and put up there 1 Samuel, chapter 24 or 22 and 24. And first one is in Adullam, the second one is in En-Gedi, in one of these 2 places. It says this: So David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. Soon his brothers and all his other relatives joined him there. Then others began coming, men who were in trouble or in debt, or were just discontented, until David was the captain of about 400 men. And then a couple of chapters later, he's in En-Gedi. It says, after Saul returned from fighting the Philistines, he was told that David had gone into the wilderness of En-Gedi. So Saul chose 3,000 elite troops from all over Israel and went to search for David and his men near the rocks of the wild goats. Let me pray for us. Jesus, I pray that in this moment, all distractions in our minds and in our personal lives, God, would be pushed to the side, and that the Spirit of God would begin to move in this place. God, you'd be the sole focus of our time and attention today. And I would just ask that you would pray for our time today. Ask you to pray for the individuals in this room, the kids and the students in the rooms behind you. Ask that God would soften our hearts and minds and allow his Spirit to do what only he can do. Jesus, we love you and ask these things in your precious and holy name. Amen. Well, I have an amazing brother-in-law. He married my sister a little over 20 years ago. He's a pastor out in California, an incredible dude. Whenever we see each other, maybe once a year, every other year, but whenever we're together, it's a really fun time. We talk about once a month. But years ago, when he first married my sister, before I'd met Brianna or was married, he lived in San Antonio with my sister, and I lived there as well. And they bought this little starter home, and they wanted to build a little back deck, a little back patio. And so he called his favorite brother-in-law. I was like, hey, can you help? And I was like, absolutely. So we go over there, measure things out, and he and I drive to Home Depot, and we buy all the lumber. Now, he and I were both in our 20s at that time. The problem was, during that time in our 20s, the wisdom gene had not quite caught up to the way it is now. And so we We overestimated the strength of my truck and underestimated the amount of lumber we needed to buy. You tracking with that? But it just felt like this is all the lumber we needed, and sure it'll fit in the back of my truck. And so we loaded it all up in the orange cart, put it in the back of my truck, and the back of my truck just went brrr, like that. Sat on the springs, the tires were just about flat, but we loaded it all up, and he and I are looking at each other, and we got to make the trek home. And he goes, I got an idea. I go, what's that? He goes, I'll sit on the back of the lumber and hold it all down. And my 25-year-old's like, yeah, that sounds like an awesome idea. Like, totally, who needs straps when you got a human being holding it all down? And so I was like, I'll drive. So sounds good. And so he sits on the back, kind of holding this lumber down. And I'm driving. Actually, I'm driving more like this. Is kind of the way I'm driving, like that. And I just remember going back to his house, nervous as can be. Like I was gripping that steering wheel because I realized, like the back of the bed's down there. I've got my favorite brother-in-law there in the back. One bump and it's all over. As I'm thinking that, I'm going a little faster than I probably should have been. And I hit a bump. And I just seen my rearview mirror, the stack of lumber go up with my brother-in-law out of the mirror and come back down, and it landed on the lumber and the mirror. So he's like, dude, slow down. I was like, yeah, that's my bad, dude. I didn't want to tell my sister I killed her new husband trying to build a deck. Now, driving back, nervous as can be, slow as can be, all this weight, all this pressure, eking back to his house. We finally make it back to his house, and we unloaded all the lumber. Now, as stressful as driving with all of that heavy weight and load was, with precious cargo in the back, it was equally as therapeutic and relieving unloading everything and realizing my brother-in-law is fine, none of the lumber fell off, and the truck is back to normal. And here's why I tell you that, because David is in a cave, either in Adullam or in En-Gedi. He's anointed to be the next king, but he's not king yet because the current king is trying to kill him. And so he's anointed to be king. God has anointed him, but the current king is trying to kill him. So he's hiding out in this cave with these hundreds of men, these outlaws around him, hiding out for his life. And he writes this prayer this to God. And it's this very therapeutic, almost release of what he's thinking and feeling on the inside. And so today, my guess is many of you are in the proverbial cave of life with an immense amount of weight and pressure on you. It could be from the biggies, from a recent death or a divorce or a financial issue. There's a job stressor. There's a school stressor. You're an athlete and just so much pressure in that way. You're brilliant in scholastics and there's pressure on that. But so much weight is upon you. Things aren't going well for you. And so today we're going to look at this prayer from a cave that David prayed to the Lord and see if you and I can't relate to a few of the ideas in it. Psalm chapter 142, if you've got your Bible, we're going to read the whole thing, verse 1 through 7 in context, and then we'll kind of pick it apart. This is what David writes in verse 1. I cry out to the Lord. I plead for the Lord's mercy. I pour out my complaints before him and tell him all my troubles. When I'm overwhelmed, you alone know the way I should turn. Wherever I go, my enemies have set traps for me. I look for someone to come and help me, but no one gives me a passing thought. No one will help me. No one cares a bit what happens to me. Then I pray to you, O Lord. I say, you are my place of refuge. You are all I really want in life. Hear my cry, for I'm very low. Rescue me from my persecutors, for they are too strong for me. Bring me out of prison so I can thank you. The godly will crowd around me, for you are good to me. And here's what I want you to grasp this whole thing in one simple context is this, that God hears your prayers even in a cave. God hears your prayers even in a cave. David is hiding out in a cave with outlaws on the run for his life, and he cries out to God, and God hears his prayers of desperation. Hears his prayers of hurt, of confusion, of fear. God hears your prayers even in the midst of whatever cave that you find yourself in. And I want to go back. I want to point out 4 things that David said that I think I'm 99% sure that all of us in this room can relate to at least one, probably multiple things that David said. I want you to go back I want you to look at verses 1 through 3. You can kind of bracket those together. He says this. He goes, I cry out to the Lord. I plead for the Lord's mercy. And he goes, I pour out my complaints before him and tell him all my troubles. And if you got a pen, you can circle the word all. Not some, not most, not 50%. I pour out all my troubles to him. He goes, when I'm overwhelmed, you alone know the way I should turn. Wherever I go, my enemies have set traps for me. First thing that David says that I think you and I can relate to is David says this, God, things are bad. God, things are bad. They're not sort of kind of where you can way through. He's going, God, this is horrible. I'm pouring out my complaints to you. Everywhere I go, my enemies are trying to set traps for me. And he just pours out his heart before the Lord. He doesn't try to sugarcoat it or try to put on the happy church face and go, it's all going to be fine. He goes, no, this is horrible. It's bad. There's people around me. And he pours out his complaints, all his troubles before the Lord. Not some, not most, not 90%. He pours them all out before the Lord. And you just need to understand that there's something very therapeutic and almost healing when you begin to pour your heart and soul out before the Lord unfiltered. He knows what you're thinking anyway. He knows your thoughts. He knows what's going on in your heart. But to be able to pour it out and go, God, what I'm going through is awful. It's painful, it's frustrating, it's confusing. It is the worst thing that I have been through in recent memory, period. What happens so many times, and as a pastor walking people through difficult times, they'll tell me, Chris, this is awful, this is painful, I can't believe I'm going through this. And then it's usually followed by comma, but, well, I guess it could be worse. I'm going, whoa, you don't have to put the caveat in there. Because otherwise, well, things could be worse, and going, yeah, but things also could be better. It is okay to go, this is bad. You don't have to compare your problems to somebody else's or to somebody in a third world country. We all have problems, but to go, God, what I'm going through is not what I signed up for. It's not fun, it's not enjoyable, it's painful, and it's breaking me beyond what I think I can stand. God, things are bad, period. And it is okay to pour out your heart before the Lord. In fact, I think you'd find it quite therapeutic if you just begin to cry out before the Lord. Because what happens, especially in a group like this, or a community we live in, we feel the expectation, I've got to put on the happy, happy church face. And everything's good, and I've got it all together, but on the inside, you're just being crushed. The weight is bearing down on you. And David, he doesn't just pour out some, he pours out all his troubles to the Lord. God, things are bad. Brianna, she's a phenomenal cook, but every now and then, and most of the time she makes up her own recipes and it's fantastic, but sometimes she'll find some new recipe on the internet that she wants to try. And she'll make it for us, and the six of us sit down and eat the dinner, and it's bad. I just can't sugarcoat it. We're just eating it. But the five of us, but we don't want to say anything, so we're just choking down this food, trying to make conversation, and we're just trying to go, oh, yeah. And then finally, Brianna, she'll put the fork down, and she goes, this is horrible. And the rest of us will go, oh, thank you for saying that. She goes, this is just awful. We're eating cereal for dinner. We're like, hooray, type of deal. But somebody had to say just how bad this was. We're not going to sugarcoat it and think it's not, like when you go, this is bad, there's almost like this relief going, yeah, this is not good. And this is what David is saying to the Lord, going, Lord, people are all around me, my enemies have set traps for me, and he pours out all his troubles to the Lord. God, things are not good. Second thing he says, I want you to look at verse 4. He says, I look for someone to come and help me, but no one gives me a passing thought. No one will help me. In this last line, no one cares a bit what happens to me. Second thing David says, I think you and I can relate to is this, is that God, no one cares. God, no one cares. And David is having a wonderful pity party for himself, and that's okay. Going, God, nobody cares. Nobody gives a second thought about what's happening to me. I'm anointed king, I should be king, and I'm in a cave. I'm anointed king, I should be king, the current king is trying to kill me, and God, no one seems to care. No one seems to be bothered by this. No one seems to come to my rescue. He feels all alone and isolated, and he tells God exactly how he feels. And my guess is there are many of you in this room, you can be surrounded by people and be some of the most isolated, lonely people in the world. And you feel like nobody cares, and nobody knows, and nobody's really given a second thought about the troubles I'm going through because they've all got their own troubles, and you feel totally isolated and all alone. And what I love about this fact is that, yes, David feels that way, but he cries out before the Lord going, God, things are bad. And God, no one seems to care. And you certainly don't need to raise your hand, but my guess is you have been in a place, or maybe you currently find yourself in a situation that you've gone through something horrible in marriage, in health, at school, at work, and nobody really seems to care. They may pat you on the back and go, you'll figure it out, but no one deeply seems to care. And this is what David is wrestling with. He's in a cave, should be king, but hiding out for his life because the current king is trying to kill him. And just goes, God, I feel all alone. I feel totally isolated and all by myself. And again, you can be surrounded by people like this at school, at your work, in the community, and feel totally alone. What you're battling through, what you're wrestling through, the situation that you're tackling, nobody seems to care. And if you're my age or older, my age-ish or older, I need you to go back in time with me in your mind. I need you to go back to your little kid days, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, those days. Revert back all the way to those days. And I need you to remember back to the very first time that you ever were lost from your parents. You ever lost from your parents, like at the grocery store or at a theme park? You need to go back in your mind. Nowadays, with Life 360 and all the things, it's like you lose the art of losing a kid. But back in the day, you lose kids all the time. And I remember the very first time that I was lost, like that moment of feeling, I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old. Our family, we were shopping in a mall. Now, if you don't know what a mall is, it's a big store, a bunch of tiny stores, and the main attractions are Foot Locker and Sbarro Pizza, all right? Those are the things. And so I remember being there, my parents were there, and all of a sudden, and you've been there, where you realize, you look around, there are thousands of people milling about in this mall. My parents are nowhere to be found. Brother and sister are nowhere to be found. I don't know what is happening. And all of a sudden, little 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old Chris, panic begins to set in. I'm surrounded by people, and nobody seems to care that I'm lost. And then in your mind, you kind of go down that rabbit hole, and you're going, well, this is it. This is how it all ends. I'm dying in front of sharper image. This is it. This is where my little 8-year-old life ends. And it probably was maybe 2 or 3 minutes at the most. It might as well have been 3 hours or 3 days. But that panic sets in, and then all of a sudden you're reunited with mom or dad, and there's that feeling of being totally isolated to feeling loved and in community. And I think for so many of us, you're there and you feel totally isolated. And people are milling about all around at work and at school and at church, but nobody really seems to know, or nobody really seems to care what you're going through. And David can relate. He's writing in this prayer in a cave going, God, things are bad. And God, no one seems to care. And then in the next verse, David makes a pivot. He makes almost like an about face. And I think from so many people, this change in his voice is where so many of us miss it. And I just want to show you the change in his voice. I want you to look at verse 5. He says, then, so after he goes, God, things are bad. God, no one cares. Verse 5. Then I pray to you, O Lord. I say, you are my place of refuge. You are all I really want in life. Hear my cry, for I am very low. Rescue me from my persecutors, for they are too strong for me. Bring me out of prison so I can thank you. Third thing David says is this: God, I need you. God, I need you. God, things are bad. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. God, thanks, I'm in a cave. I should be king. Things are bad. My enemies around me. God, no one seems to care. To be quite frank, Lord, this is frustrating. I'm all alone. No one cares what's happening to me. And then he shifts. And then he pivots. But God, I need you. I need you to rescue me. I need you to save me. I need your saving hand of grace to reach out to me. And he says, to bring me out of this prison, to rescue me from my persecutors. So the things that he's dealing with, being surrounded by persecutors, things are bad. Being locked away in this prison of a cave, going, God, I need you. And I think for so many of us, we like the first two, pouring out our complaints before God. God, things are bad, things are horrible. I don't like it, nobody likes me, and it's this great pity party. But David doesn't stay there. He totally shifts his mode of prayer and says, God, I need you. I need you in my life. I need you to rescue me. I need you to save me. I need you to deliver me. And he goes from complaining to reaching out his hand going, God, if you don't save me, this is not going to end well. God, if you don't help me, it's not going to go well. I think for so many of us, we stay in the complaining mode, but we don't ever move to the, all right, Lord, I'm going to need you to rescue me out of this prison. Lord, I'm going to need you to rescue me out of this cave. Lord, I feel all alone. I'm going to need you by my side as I walk through this disaster, as I walk through this pain in my life. And David is there in that moment. God, things are bad, like really bad. And God, no one seems to care. But God, I need you. And that's where you and I have to get through as we begin to pour out our heart and soul before the Lord to make that change and that shift to going, God, I need you to show up. I need your help in my life. I need your solution. I need your joy. I need your peace. I need your mercy. I need your grace. I need you to walk beside me as I walk through this moment of being in the middle of a cave. And you've experienced people like this that want to just stay on the front half of complaining and never move to the second half. Especially if you've ever been in sales industry or the hospitality industry or the restaurant industry. If you've ever had a job that requires you to have customer service, then you know exactly what I'm talking about when people just want to bellyache and complain without any resolution. I've been in all three of those industries, and if you've been in customer service, then you've certainly had customers complain, and that's fine, that's their right. They had an expectation that wasn't met. Customer comes to you, hey, my food wasn't good. Hey, I expected something different at this, whatever. The product wasn't great. And then you as the customer service rep, you go to them and go, I am so sorry, but here's a way I think we can make it right. Here's a way I think I can help out. Here's a way I think I can take some money off the next thing just to help out in this situation. And a lot of times, the people that complain see that you want to help and they change. They realize they had a bad experience, but all of a sudden you're there to help. And so their attitude or demeanor changes. Why? Because you're there, you're trying to help, you're trying to resolve the problem. But you've also experienced it where people don't ever make that change. Like you offer a solution, you offer like, hey, I can make this better or different, and they just stay bitter, complaining, and bellyaching. And you realize they don't want your help, they just want you to be a punching bag. They just want to unload and bellyache and complain. Then when you try to offer a solution, they go deeper into the complaints and the bellyaching. I think for so many of us, we do the same thing. God's going, I'm here. I'm here to give you grace and mercy. And no, you may not be able to walk around the valley of shadow of death. You're going to have to walk through it. But I will be with you. And we go, yeah, but it's just not good. I thought it'd be better. I thought you'd make it easier. I thought I could go around this situation, but instead I got to walk through it. And instead of reaching out to the Lord, we go deeper into the bellyaching and complaining. And it's this downward spiral. David is there, but then he makes the turn and says, God, I need you to show up. I need you to rescue me, and I need you to help me because only you are going to get me out of this prison. Only you're going to rescue me from my enemies. And my question to all of us is, we're there in that moment. Are we willing to make the turn? And then the final thing he says, the last part of verse 7, just how he finishes this psalm. He says, the godly will crowd around me. And then this last little line, for you are good to me. Circle that, highlight that, star that. Fourth and final thing David says, God, you are good to me. He goes from being broken in a cave, being surrounded by his enemies, to he finishes going, God, you're good. You're gracious and you're holy. And he finishes this prayer going, God, you are good to me. Now, I want you to notice, he's still in the cave. Nowhere in the middle of this psalm does he go, hey, I'm praying this. And God goes, hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to take you out of the cave now. He's still there in the cave, still being hunted for by Saul. There's still a threat on his life, but he finishes the prayer going, God, it's bad. I feel all alone. God, I need your help. And God, you are still good to me no matter how bad it gets. No matter how difficult it is, how painful it is, God, you are still good. And so the question is in the situation that you're in, that find yourself in, are you willing to admit, are you willing to trust that God is still good? I'm going to give you something just to think about it. I'm going to give you a line, but before they put it up on the screen, I'm going to give you this one caveat. This line is going to sound a little cliche and like it should be on a t-shirt, okay? I'm going to put it up there. You're going to be like, oh, I think I've read that somewhere. I mean, maybe you have, but I'm going to put this line up there. But I need you to throw out the cliche mind out of your thought. And I just need you to realize, like, this is an unchanging, unwavering truth about God. Whether you choose to believe it or not, choose to accept it or not, does not change the fact that this is the absolute truth about God. And the truth is this, is that things may be bad, but God is always good. Things may be painful. They may be confusing. They may be so overwhelming. You might have the biggest weight and pressure upon you, but God is always good. If you were here last week, we talked about his omnibenevolence, or his always being good. There's never this moment where the goodness of God changes based on your situation. Well, how dark of a cave are you really in? And then God will kind of adjust his goodness accordingly. God is always good no matter how bad things get. And again, I know that sounds cliche, like it should be on a t-shirt, but if you can really zoom out and go, that is an unchanging, unwavering truth about God, that no matter the situation is, God is always, always good. And this is what David rests upon. In a cave, running for his life, but returns back to the truth that God's plan for him is good, even though it's in the middle of a cave running for his life. Something happened here at the church about 5 years ago. A lot of you were here. Some of you, you've been new within the past 5 years, so you don't remember all of this that happened. But 5 years ago, we decided that our kids and student space back there, it's about 25,000 square feet, needed a total remodel makeover. And so it was a 12-week project, so we decided just to do it all in 12 weeks. And so we put up a temporary plywood wall kind of back there at the half, and then totally gutted the kids and student area for 12 weeks. Gutted, remodeled, everything was brand new. But during those 12 weeks, kids ministry happened in the lobby with pipe and drape and little like mats on the ground. Just by a show of hands, how many of you were here with your kids when that was happening? Wow, and you stuck around with the church. That is amazing. So glad about that. Because I will tell you, when the kids were out there in the lobby, week 1 was awesome. Week 2 through 12 were horrible. Because up here, and I'm like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. The kids are just down there, but they're sitting on concrete and pipe and drape, and it was awful. And so every week, I'd pull out the set of building plans from the architect, and I'd unroll them, and I'd have to remind myself, oh, this is the plan. This is the good plan that we're building towards. Then I have to remind the staff, hey, I know it's painful. This is what's going to be like in 12 weeks. Then we have to remind our volunteers, hey, I know it's difficult, but man, this is what it's going to be like in 12 weeks. Then we have to remind the attendees, hey, here's the picture, here's the plan. The plan is good, even though the process is painful. God's plan for your life is a good plan, even though what you're going through feels like you're in the darkest cave you can possibly imagine. And no matter how things get, no matter how painful they get, no matter how bad they get, God is always, always good. And so his plans and his word and wisdom and instruction for your life is always good, no matter how painful it gets. And so what do you do with all of this? I'll give you 2 things to do. And it's simply this, is to tell God how you feel and trust God with how you respond. Tell God how you feel, trust God with how you respond. And I share that with you with the most sensitivity as your pastor. because I'm keenly aware of specific individuals that will be here in this service and in the next service in our church community that are going through some brutally dark times at this moment. And so if we were sitting down over coffee, I would tell you this exact same thing. It is okay to tell God how you feel, to pour out your heart before him, but then to trust him with how you respond. God, it's painful, it's dark, it's lonely, but you are good and you are holy, and I'm trusting in your plan for my life. I'll finish with this and then give us something to do here at the end. I'm going to finish with 2 Samuel chapter 5. 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 1 through 5 is kind of the full circle moment and picture of David. Anointed king, in the caves on the run for his life, but God's plan was for him always to be king, even though the current king was trying to kill him. So he's in the middle of it, but full circle, God brings him to the place that he had promised him. 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 1. It says, "Then all the tribes of Israel went to David at Hebron and told him, 'We are your own flesh and blood. In the past, when Saul was our king, and you're the one who really led the forces of Israel, and the Lord told you, you will be the shepherd of my people Israel. You will be Israel's leader.'" They remind David, here's the promise, the plan that God had for him. So there at Hebron, King David made a covenant before the Lord with all the elders of Israel, and they anointed him king of Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 40 years in all. He had reigned over Judah from Hebron for 7 years and 6 months, and from Jerusalem he reigned over all of Israel and Judah for 33 years. 40 years in all, that God's plan was being lived out in David's life. But there in the dark moments of the cave, as David is crying out, going, "It's bad. No one cares. But God, I need you, and I'm trusting that you still are good." And God brought him through it, from the cave as an outlaw to sitting on the throne as king over all of Israel. And I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what dark cave that you're in, but it is okay to say, "God, things are bad." And God, no one seems to care. But to make that turn and say, "God, I need you, and I'm trusting that you are good." Now I'm going to give you a moment here to pray some of these prayers that David prayed while he was in the cave. And I'm just going to give you an opportunity to pray quietly there in your seat. And so I'm going to ask if they go ahead and put Psalm 142 up there. And then I'm going to give you a moment. And I don't know what dark cave that you're in, but I think it would be really unwise for you just to kind of sit there and go through the motions and then walk out this door. Satan would love for that to happen, to be candid with you. It'd be great for him, because then you just kind of check out and go. Or you can stop and say, "God, things are bad. I feel all alone. But God, I need you. God, I'm trusting that you are good." And so I'm going to give you a moment. Just go ahead and bow your head and close your eyes, or you can read the verses on the screen, but just to give you a couple of minutes to pray to the Lord today. while you're still sitting there with your heads bowed and eyes closed, if I can, as your pastor, if I can ask you, if I can pray for you and you're in a dark, dark place, if you would, raise your hand up in the air just so I can kind of see who I need to pray for. If you're in a dark place, put your hands down. Father, I pray for the individuals that raise their hands. Don't know all their stories, God, but I've been in some dark caves myself and know it can feel very lonely and overwhelming. And so, God, I pray that you give them a peace that passes all understanding. That you would guard their hearts and minds as they rest in Christ Jesus. Pray that you'd strengthen them. Pray that you'd remind them today, in this moment, that you are good. No matter how difficult, how painful, how bad things have gotten, that you are still good and you are still holy. Jesus, we love you. And we ask all these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Hey, as you were praying just now, if there is something that you would like to spend a few moments praying with someone, we have a prayer team that meets right over here after the service, and they would love the opportunity to pray with you. I don't know about you, but we are about to enter into one of my favorite seasons of the year. The holiday season is one of the most generous, most great opportunities for us to love others. And around here, we call that Love Local. And on your way in, you probably saw the wall that's out there and all the different things that maybe are on there. Well, this year we're partnering with the Place and the Place of Forsyth, and we asked them what their biggest needs were. And they said that their biggest needs were gifts for teenagers. And so we have cards with probably 500 or more different things that teenagers in the Forsyth County need. And we have lots of people here who are really generous. And I imagine there'll be no cards on that wall by the end of the day today. But I wanted to let you know about that. So that's one thing you can do as we go through the holiday season. Also, if you wanted to serve in a particular area, we've been talking about kids as a next step over the last couple weeks. Students also needs help, specifically men. Men who are willing to spend some time leading small groups, and also men and women who would be willing to be engaged in helping with production. So they would love that. Hey, I hope you had a great rest of your Sunday afternoon. So glad that you're here and glad that you come here to local church.